Have you ever watched your dog start acting weird right before a big storm rolls in and thought, does he know something I don't? Yeah, it's a question people have been asking for literally thousands of years. So today we're going to dig in and separate the real science from, the superstition. Let's get into it.
So that's the big question, right? Can our dogs actually predict earthquakes, tsunamis, major storms? To even begin to answer that, we've got to go back to a pretty dramatic real-world event that put this whole idea to the ultimate test.
Okay, picture this. It's the dead of winter, 1975, in a Chinese city called Haicheng. And for days, something just feels off. City officials are getting flooded with all these reports of animals acting bizarrely.
And we're not talking about small things. We're talking about dogs howling around the clock, just refusing to go inside. Farm animals were totally spooked. And then there was this snakes, which should have been hibernating deep underground, started slithering out onto the frozen roads where they just froze to death. I mean, you couldn't ignore it. Something was definitely up.
So the city officials, looking at all this chaos, they make this incredible gutsy call. They order the evacuation of 90,000 residents. And just a few hours after that, a massive 7.3 magnitude earthquake completely flattened the city. The animals' weird behavior, in part, led to an evacuation that saved tens of thousands of lives. So what in the world was going on?
To really get what happened in Haicheng, we have to look at the long history behind this belief, and of course, the healthy dose of skepticism that modern science brings to the whole conversation.
This idea is anything but new. Way back in 373 BCE, historians wrote about animals just bolting from the Greek city of Hellas right before a quake wiped it out. Fast forward, and you see it again in Pompeii. And in our own time, there were countless stories of elephants and dogs running for the hills just before the huge 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami hit. After Japan's Tohoku quake in 2011, a study even showed a real link between how anxious a dog was and how close it was to the epicenter. The stories are there, right? They're powerful, and they go back thousands of years.
But here's the other side of the coin. The U.S. Geological Survey, a pretty big authority on this stuff, is crystal clear. They say, look, the stories are compelling, but a reproducible connection has not been scientifically established. There's no proof you can repeat in a lab. So why this huge gap between what people have seen for centuries and what science can actually prove? Well, a big part of the answer is in our own heads. It really boils down to something called confirmation bias. Just think about it for a second. Your dog might act weird for 100 different reasons on any given day. On 99 of those days, you probably don't even think twice about it. But on that one day it happens right before a huge thunderstorm, bam, your brain locks it in. It creates a powerful connection, you remember the hit, and you completely forget all the misses. And that's exactly why scientists need a lot more than just stories. Okay, so if it's not some kind of psychic power, what is really going on? Well, the answer isn't in anything supernatural. It's all in their biology. Dogs don't have a sixth sense. What they have are 5 senses that are so powerful, so extraordinary, they're basically perceiving a world that's totally invisible and silent to us. Let's start with hearing, because the difference here is just mind-blowing. We are completely deaf to those super low-frequency rumbles, what's called infrasound, that are created by storms that are still way off in the distance, or by tectonic plates grinding against each other. But dogs, they can hear it. And they can also hear the super high-frequency sounds of rocks cracking and fracturing deep underground, which can be a sign of an impending earthquake. So to a dog, the world isn't silent before a disaster. It's getting very, very loud. And get this is the perfect illustration. A researcher, Dr. Stanley Coren, was doing a study on canine anxiety, and just by pure chance, a 6.8 magnitude earthquake hit right in the middle of it. His data was incredible. The day before the quake, nearly half the dogs in his study showed a huge spike in both anxiety and activity. His conclusion? They were hearing those high-frequency sounds from the shifting rock. Then, you've got their sense of smell. And this number, it's just staggering. A dog can have up to 300 million scent receptors in its nose. We have a pathetic 6 million. This lets them do things like smell ozone, that kind of sharp metallic scent that lightning creates, carried on the wind from a storm that's still miles and miles away. To a dog, a storm that's coming has a very distinct smell.
And finally, there's something we almost never think about: physical pain. So here's how it works. Right before a storm, the barometric pressure in the atmosphere drops. When that happens, the pressure inside a dog's joints is suddenly higher than the pressure outside. This makes their joint capsules swell up a little bit. Now, if your dog has arthritis or an old injury, that swelling hurts a lot. So their restlessness isn't them worrying about the future, it's a reaction to actual pain they are feeling right now.
So, knowing all this, how can we, as dog owners, learn to read our own little living barometers? Let's turn all this science into a practical guide.
I bet a lot of you are going to recognize some of these. You've got the classic signs like pacing back and forth, heavy panting, and hiding in small, safe-feeling spots like a closet or the bathroom. Some dogs get super clingy, they won't leave your side, while others will just whine or howl. And in really serious cases, you might see trembling, shaking, or even destructive behavior as they try to escape all that overwhelming sensory input.
It's also really crucial to understand the difference in these reactions. So, fear, that's a totally normal response. A loud clap of thunder happens, the dog startles, but then it settles. Anxiety is the next level up. That's when the dog starts pacing the second the sky gets a little dark. It's anticipating the storm. But a phobia, that's an extreme, irrational panic. The dog might start freaking out just because it's a cloudy day, and that panic just gets worse and worse with every single storm.
And this right here is super, super important. If you have a middle-aged or older dog that suddenly starts showing storm anxiety or their existing anxiety gets way worse, it might not be a psychological thing at all. It could very well be a sign that they're in pain, maybe from arthritis that's being flared up by that change in pressure. You should always, always check with your vet.
So, after we've looked at the history, the psychology, the biology, where do we land? What's the final verdict from science?
It all comes down to this one crucial distinction. It is not prediction, it is reaction. See, prediction implies they know what's going to happen in the future, and there's zero scientific evidence for that. Reaction, on the other hand, is a real-time response to things they can feel, hear, and smell right now. And that is completely backed up by their biology. Your dog isn't a psychic. It's an incredibly sensitive instrument.
And this is pretty much the consensus across the board. You've got Dr. Corin, whose work points to a specific way they hear these events. You've got Dr. Temple Grandin, who explains that animals are just tuned into all this raw sensory data that our human brains are designed to filter out. And then you have the official bodies, like the USGS and NOAA, who hold that strict scientific line. Without proof you can repeat, it simply isn't prediction.
At the end of the day, understanding the science behind this doesn't make our dogs any less amazing. I think it makes them more amazing. Knowing that their anxiety might be coming from a place of just overwhelming sound, or even real physical pain, well, that changes our job from just being a curious observer to being a truly compassionate caregiver.
So the next time you see your dog pacing before a storm, you'll know what's really going on. They aren't telling you the future, they're telling you about their present. And that really leaves us with one last thought. Your dog is a living, breathing sensor, tuned into a world you can't perceive. What is it sensing right now?